So FDR, January 6, 1941, gives a speech called The Four Freedoms. So this is 1941, right? We're about to fight against Nazi Germany. So why is he talking about just these four freedoms? And which four freedoms do you think he wants to protect the most? Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, members of the 77th Congress. I address you, the members of the 77th Congress, at a moment unprecedented in the history of the Union. I use the word unprecedented, but because at no previous time has American security been as seriously threatened from without as it is today. Even when the World War broke out in 1914, it seemed to contain only a small threat of danger to our own American future. But as time went on, the American people began to visualize what the downfall of democratic nations might mean for our own democracy. We need not overemphasize imperfections in the Peace of Versailles. We need not harp on the failure of the democracies to deal with problems of world reconstruction. We should remember that the peace of 1919 was far less unjust than the kind of pacification which began even before Munich and which is being carried on under the new order of tyranny that seeks to spread over every continent today. The American people have unalterably set their faces against that tyranny. Every realist knows that the democratic way of life is at this moment being directly assailed in every part of the world, assailed either by arms or by secret spreading of poisonous propaganda, by those who seek to destroy unity and promote discord in nations that are still at peace. The four freedoms is the free speech, religion, also freedom from fear and freedom from want. Freedom from fear and freedom from want. And he says that we have, in the 1940s, the ability to bring about a world where we are free from fear and we are free from want. We also have freedom of religion and the freedom of speech. Those are the four freedoms. Every realist knows that the democratic way of life is at this moment being directly assailed in every part of the world, assailed either by arms, by secret spreading of poisonous propaganda, by those who seek to destroy unity and promote discord in nations that are still at peace. During 16 long months, this assault has blotted out the whole pattern of democratic life in an appealing number of independent nations, great and small. The assailants are still on the march, threatening other nations, great and small. Therefore, as your president, performing my constitutional duty to give to the Congress information of the State of the Union, I find it unhappily necessary to report that the future and the safety of our country and our democracy are overwhelmingly involved in events far beyond our borders. Armed defense of democratic existence is now being gallantly waged in 4 continents. If that defense fails, all the population and all the resources of Europe, Asia, Africa, and Australasia will be dominated by the conquerors. Let us remember that the total of those populations and their resources in those 4 continents greatly exceeds the sum total of the population and the resources of the whole of the Western hemisphere many times over. So he's saying Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia. So the rest of the world has a shit ton of people. We got the Western hemisphere, South and North America. In times like these, it's immature and incidentally untrue for anybody to brag that an unprepared America single-handedly and with one hand tied behind its back can hold off the whole world. No realistic American can expect from a dictator's peace, international generosity, or return of true independence, or world disarmament, or freedom of expression, or freedom of religion, or even good business. The need of the moment is that our actions and our policies should be devoted primarily, almost exclusively, to meeting this foreign peril, for all our domestic problems are now a part of the great emergency. Just as our national policy in internal affairs has been based upon a decent respect for the rights and the dignity of all our fellow men within our gates, so our national policy in foreign affairs has been based on a decent respect for the rights and dignity of all nations, large and small. And the justice of morality must and will win in the end. Our national policy is this. First, by an impressive expression of the public will and without regard to partisanship, we are committed to an all-inclusive national defense. Second, By an impressive expression of the public will and without regard to partisanship, we are committed to full support of all those resolute peoples everywhere who are resisting aggression and are thereby keeping war away from our hemisphere. By this support, we express our determination that the democratic cause shall prevail, and we strengthen the defense and the security of our own nation. Third, by an impressive expression of the public will and without regard to partisanship, we are committed to the proposition that principles of morality and considerations for our own security will never permit us to acquiesce in a peace dictated by aggressors and sponsored by appeasers. We know that enduring peace cannot be bought at the cost of other people's freedom. In a recent national election, there is no substantial difference between the two great parties in respect to that national policy. No issue was fought out on this line before the American electorate. Today, it is abundantly evident that American citizens everywhere are demanding and supporting speedy and complete action in recognition of obvious danger. Therefore, the immediate need is a swift and driving increase in our armament production. A free nation has the right to expect full cooperation from all groups. A free nation has the right to look to the leaders of business, of labor, and of agriculture to take the lead in stimulating effort, not among other groups, but within their own groups. The best way of dealing with the few slackers or troublemakers in our midst is first to shame them by patriotic example, and if that fails, to use the sovereignty of government to save government. As men do not live by bread alone, they do not fight by armaments alone. Those who man our defenses and those behind them who build our defenses must have the stamina and the courage which come from unshakable belief in the manner of life which they are defending. The mighty action that we are calling for cannot be based on a disregard of all things worth fighting for. The nation takes great satisfaction and much strength from the things which have been done to make its people conscious of the individual's stake in the preservation of democratic life in America. Those things have toughened the fiber of our people, have renewed their faith, and strengthened their devotion to the institutions we make ready to protect. Certainly, this is no time for any of us to stop thinking about the social and economic problems which are the root cause of the social revolution, which is today a supreme factor in the world. For there is nothing mysterious about the foundations of a healthy and strong democracy. The basic things expected by our people of their political and economic systems are simple. They are: 1, equality of opportunity for youth and for others. 2, jobs for those who can work. 3, security for those who need it. 4, the ending of special privilege for the few. 5, the preservation of civil liberties for all. 6, the enjoyment of the fruits of scientific progress in a wider and constantly rising standard of living. 7, those are the 6. Equality of opportunity for youth and others, jobs for those who could work, security for those who need it, the ending of special privilege for the few, the preservation of civil liberties, for all, and the enjoyment of the fruits of scientific progress. These are the simple basic things that must never be lost sight of in the turmoil and unbelievable complexity of our modern world. The inner and abiding strength of our economic and political systems is dependent upon the degree to which they fulfill these expectations. Many subjects connected with our social economy call for immediate improvement. As examples, we should bring more citizens under the coverage of old age pensions and unemployment insurance. We should widen the opportunities for adequate medical care. We should plan a better system by which persons deserving or needing gainful employment may obtain it. I have called for personal sacrifice. I am assured of the willingness of almost all Americans to respond to that call. Part of the sacrifice means the payment of more money in taxes. In my budget message, I shall recommend that a greater portion of this great defense program be paid for from taxation than we are paying today. No person should try or be allowed to get rich out of this program, and the principle of tax payments in accordance with ability to pay should be constantly before our eyes to guide our legislation. If the Congress maintains these principles, the voters, putting patriotism ahead of pocketbooks, will give you their applause. In the future days which we seek to make secure, we look forward to a world founded upon 4 essential human freedoms. The first freedom is the freedom of speech and expression everywhere in the world. The second freedom is the freedom of every person to worship God in his or her own way everywhere in the world. The third freedom is the freedom from want. These are not in the Bill of Rights. Religion and speech are in the Bill of Rights, but freedom from want? I want something to eat. I am cold and I want warmth. I don't have safety. freedom from fear. I am afraid of the right-wing sovereign movement. I am not a child abuser. I am not a right-wing Nazi. I am not a terrible terrorist piece of shit that goes around murdering people's puppies or kidnapping people's puppies. That is not who I am. And it's fucked up that it seems like my society is on the side of people that would go around murdering and kidnapping people's puppies. The third is freedom from want, which translated into world terms means economic understandings which will secure to every nation a healthy peacetime life for its inhabitants everywhere in the world. The fourth is freedom from fear, which translated into world terms means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point in such a thorough fashion that no nation will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor anywhere in the world. That is no vision of a distant millennium. It is a definite basis for a kind of world attainable in our own time and generation. That kind of world is the very antithesis of the so-called new order of tyranny, which the dictators seek to create with the crash of a bomb. To that new order, we oppose the greater conception, the moral order. A good society is able to face schemes of world domination and foreign revolutions alike without fear. Since the beginning of our American history, we have been engaged in change in a perpetual peaceful revolution, a revolution which goes on steadily, quietly adjusting itself to changing conditions without the concentration camp or the quick lime in the ditch. The world order which we seek is the cooperation of free countries working together in a friendly, civilized society. This nation has placed its destiny in the hands and heads and hearts of its millions of free men and women, and its faith in freedom under the guidance of God. Freedom means the supremacy of human rights everywhere. Our support goes to those who struggle to gain those rights or keep them. Our strength is our unity of purpose. To that high concept, there can be no end save victory. So that's FDR. That's FDR saying we need freedom from fear, freedom from want. He's ginning us up. As that Sheridan says, he's ginning us up. He's getting ready to send us into war. And what are we fighting for? We're fighting for freedom. And why? Because we're democracy. We believe in freedom and democracy. We got a Bill of Rights and the Constitution. We got the three branches of government. We got federalism. So we got federal government and states. And we got elections. So you want to be a tyrant? Well, you're going to have to break through a lot of you want to be the king? Okay, well then you're going to have to get goddamn 50 million voters. You want to be the king of America? Get 50 million voters. And then when you get elected, then you're going to have to pass legislation that the Supreme Court doesn't knock down. The legislature will be the one that passes the legislation. So who knows if you'll even get your agenda. They're going to pass their agenda, and it'll be up to you to either go along with their agenda or to not go along with their agenda. So if you want to be the king, you're going to have to shove your agenda down the throat of the legislature, get them to pass all your new laws, and then make sure the Supreme Court doesn't undo says that any of the things you're doing is unconstitutional. You have to respect the three branches of government. You also can't break the sovereignty of the 50 states. If you're the federal government, the 50 states, there's a back and forth there. These are all to prevent tyranny. And you also can't break individual freedoms. We got the Bill of Rights, so you can't restrict our freedom of speech or freedom of religion or freedom from want or freedom from fear. These are freedoms that have been with us for 300 fucking years, and there's a reason. I mean, it's been in the English Civil War. The English Bill of Rights been here for a while. So I was looking for something, I forget what. January 6th, 1941. So it'd be January 6, 2023, right? 41, 23. This is what? 81 years ago. FDR gave this speech 81 years ago. And I still hear a lot of it today. And why don't we pass freedom from want and freedom from fear? Let's add those two freedoms to the Bill of Rights. Let's see if any of you rat bastard fucks got the goddamn cojones to do something like that.